start the LibreOffice Calc and you will see this screen. Let me give you a brief revision of what we did. We saw what a cell is, how do we make a reference to a cell, what the name of the cell is, and how do we write in data into cells, and how we write what we call formulas into the cells to make reference to other cells using values in other cells. We wanted to show the sum of all of these cells to appear in this cell. We could take out the physical calculator and we could just add the number 565, 1994, etc. And we could type in the sum over here. But instead what we did, we wrote in something that started with an equal sign and it made the reference to all of these cells. Like C4 is the name of this cell and D4 is the name of the second cell, and so on. We put a plus sign in between all of these cell names so that we are telling this software that I want to add any value which is placed inside C4 or D4. Simply add those values, and the equal sign says that place the output of all of this into the cell in which I am typing this formula. So I'm typing this formula in J4, right? So in reality, this equal sign means that I'm trying to say J4 is equal to C4 plus D4 plus E4 plus up to I4. So it will show all the values for that. Similarly, I could do another thing. I could go and use this function. We call these functions. We could use a sum function which starts with an equal sign again. It starts like a formula. Then you mention the name of the function, and then you place an opening bracket in front of the name, and then you mention the range of cells in which all those values are present. So the range is mentioned using C6 colon I6. So all the cells starting from C6, which are C6, D6, E6, F6, G6, H6, I6. We don't need to mention all the cells in between them if you have placed a colon there. And the command that we want to give to the software that we want to add all of these numbers is reflected using the name of this function, which is called sum. So these two things, like writing the functions and writing the formulas, is a really important thing you're going to see in this course. Let me ask you something. What do you call something that has a name and it can have different values? A variable, yes, exactly. So a variable is an entity which has a name, like all of these cells have names, like this cell has E6. It can have any value that we want this cell to have. So I can give it a value like 585, I can give it some other value. And similarly in mathematics, you have seen that in algebra, you can allocate a variable a value based on values of other variables. So this is what we have done in this function, where we are writing a formula which we should have written in this form: J4 equal to C4. So now this line, if you assume that all of these entities like F4 and G4 are variables, we have written an algebraic equation in which we are saying that J4 is the sum of variables C4, D4, and all of these. But since this is a software different from algebra, since we know that we are writing this formula in J4, we don't need to mention J4 over here. So we get rid of this and we press enter. And as soon as we do that, all the values of these variables like C4, D4, E4, F4, G4, H4, I4, they are added and the sum is shown in this J4. And so where do you get to know the formulas? So the formulas are mostly common sense formulas. Like for example, here I'm writing, let's say salary 80,000, and then I type in the deductions for the take home salary, right? So if I have the deductions of like 3,500, now there is a formula that needs to be written in this box. That formula should simply be the difference of these two numbers, right? F14 minus F15. So as soon as I do that, I get the value 76,500. The answer to question that where the formulas come from, they come from real life. So you need to understand what is going on and you need to apply formulas based on that. So for example, if I add a row over here and I type in overtime and I type in like 15,000. So now the formula should become, because this is obvious that your salary will have the overtime added to it, and the taxes deducted from that. So now what I've written, F14 plus F15 minus F16. There can be other ways of calculating the same thing. For example, I could type in subtotal of earnings. What would I type in over here? This thing plus this thing. So this would be the subtotal of earnings. This would be the subtotal of earnings. And now I can still calculate the total salary. How? I can take this subtotal, which is F17 95,000, and I could subtract 3500, which is in F16, from this, and I will still get 91,500. So this is slightly different way of calculating the same thing, but now I'm able to show the total earnings before subtraction from the total earnings. Okay, there was another column just that looked really the same, but these details were for, let's say, some other person, and the salary was, let's suppose, the same, but the overtime was 9,000, and the deductions were more. Let's make them 4,500. So the total you can see over here is different. The take home salary for this person is 84,500, and the take home salary for Ahmed was 91,500. Now I could have something that says what is the average salary that my company gave to these two people. So this is something again which is a knowledge that comes from the real life, that the average is calculated by taking the first value, adding it to the second value, and dividing the total value by 2. And I truly hope that someone sees that I have calculated this wrong. So in this formula, I am dividing I18 by 2, whereas I should have divided the sum of F18 and I18 by 2. And that is called operator precedence, where plus sign is operated after the divide sign. So if I write all of this without brackets, it tells the software that divide these two things before doing this plus sign, because divide has a higher priority, and then multiplication, then minus sign, and then plus sign. What I can do to correct this, I can apply a bracket so that it isolates the sum of F18 and I18 from this divide thing. So now this sum is separated from the divide thing using the brackets. So if I do this and I press enter, so now this is the correct average for these two numbers, 91,500 and 84,500. The correct sum is 88,000. So we can also calculate this average in a slightly different way using functions. So I could use average, and I could type in the names of these cells like F18 semicolon 84,500 bracket close, and I will still get the same value, which is the average of these two salaries. So I hope you guys get the idea of what is going on over here, and we are actually changing the behavior based on our own requirement, because my requirement in this case was that I wanted to find out the average. So I can similarly find out the average for 1,000 of my employees in my company, or 10,000 of the employees, or all the deductions that I made from their salaries, the sum of all of those things, or average of all of those things, or standard deviation, or mean, or there are so many other statistical things that I could want to calculate.